Welcome back. The point of view tonight is heavy on economy. We're trying to break it down so it doesn't get too complicated. Luckily, we have the IMF resident rep who has been in Ghana for just 2 months. He was part of the team that came for the third review, and now he's the guy in charge of the Ghana operation. And don't forget, the Minister of Finance and the Governor just came back from Washington for what they call the annual meetings. This is after the 5th review team also left. So it's like they come, we go. And he's here dealing with all of those. I had a final question on inflation. I remember when inflation was rising in 2022, there was this sort of debate about whether it's supply side or demand side. And I remember people criticized the central bank at the time for trying to use its monetary policy rate to try and control inflation that was not of its doing. Because a lot of people believe that the inflation was a supply side, fiscal deficit inflation type. When you look at our single digit inflation that was shown, is the 9.4 consistent with other indicators? And does this prove that a lot of the inflation was from the supply side and not the demand side?
Thank you, Bernard. So let me say a few words. In general, in Africa, what we have seen is that exchange rate plays an important role for determining inflation.
Okay.
Okay. So in 2022, you had a steady depreciating, maybe 50 to 100% per year rate. And that basically translates, typically the pass-through to inflation is about 20%. So if you have 100% depreciation, you will have 20% inflation.
That's what's called imported inflation.
Only from the imported goods.
Imported inflation.
Now, let's go back to 2025, okay? Inflation came down from about 24% to 9.4 in September. We are waiting for the number for October coming this week. So now, a few things have changed relative to 2024. So there is a bit of base effects there. One, on the supply side, last year you had the drought, and that impacted massively food prices.
Yes, please.
So most of the inflation last year was driven by food prices. The other component was the exchange rate. The exchange rate was depreciating last year, while this year is appreciating. So that's for the imported goods. And then when you look at other issues, for instance, fiscal discipline, this year is much better by the current government than the spending last year. And that basically helps as well to shrink this gap and to basically address the issue of inflation.
The BOG cut its monetary policy rate by 650 basis points if you check its past 3 announcements. That's very big. Yeah. The steepness of the curve I showed within a short period of time, is that troubling at all, or is that okay if you consider everything else?
So if you look at the inflation, inflation itself came down quite abruptly. So the fact that the BOG decided to cut rates from a very high level, 28%, I think, in March, to the current level is 21.5.
Yes.
So it's about, you mentioned 650 basis points.
Yes.
Indeed,
yeah.
Right. But what you need to take into account is also real interest rates. So real interest rates now were significant before they start cutting, and therefore with higher than historical averages of real interest rates, you need to bring them back to the historical average.
Please take me to the monetary, take me to the interest rate chart, not this one. I just wanted to show to viewers what I was saying. Yeah, so I was basically saying that this is very steep drop. This is a very steep drop, right? From 28, I think it's much lower even now, right? This is very steep drop, one of the steepest we've seen. And of course, these people expect this to much lower as well. So you're saying that it's still okay. We are still okay.
What the IMF team advised the BOG is to keep a prudent monetary policy in order inflation expectations to re-anchor at the single digits. So you need to keep monetary policy tighter than usual to have these expectations re-anchor in the monetary policy band.
Interesting. All right, now let's talk about the fifth review. What we were told after the team came was that Ghana is on track. All right? But there are many things you look at. So what are the key benchmarks for you to arrive to say a country is on track? Is it 3 things? Is it 4 things? What are the key bullet points of knowing that this country is on track?
Well, obviously, in terms of the review process, I would say all indicative targets, quantitative targets at end June 2025 were met. And that is an important plus. Now, when it comes to structural benchmarks, Ghana has made significant progress, but several key reforms remain essential to secure this long-lasting macroeconomic stability. Think about it like building a house. Okay, Ghana has put a strong foundation and has now the structure of the house. It needs to fix and build the roof while the sun is still shining, and then basically add the doors, the windows, to offer this house to be livable and resilient for future shocks. So let me say maybe 3 main reform areas. First, on the continued fiscal discipline, I think this is important for the country to strengthen how the government manages its finances, boost revenue, domestic revenue, also improve the tax administration, and ensuring that public spending is efficient and transparent. The second important aspect is the energy sector. And the government has renegotiated recently the legacy areas with the IPPs, with the independent power producers, and has taken steps to improve the revenues of the ECG and the cash waterfall mechanism. But this is not sufficient. More work has to be done. Further steps need to reduce the arrears and ensure that financial sustainability of the energy sector is in place. And one last aspect for the state-owned enterprises in general is the governance and transparency. And this comes not only for the energy sector, but for the gold board and cocoa board as well. And then the last point I want to make, last but not least, we have worked closely with the central bank, with the Bank of Ghana, on a revamped foreign exchange operations framework. And this was an important key pillar for the fifth review. Basically, the new framework, which is rules-based, transparent, and objective-oriented, if you want, has 3 main objectives. First, to continue to rebuild external buffers. Second, to smoothen excessive volatility. And third, to intermediate FX flows that go to the BOG, including through gold bond.
Can you repeat those 3?
So first,
continue to
rebuild the FX buffers, right?
By that you mean reserves?
Reserves, exactly. Second, to smoothen volatility of the exchange rate. This should be a framework where you have some certain rules, and when volatility exceeds certain levels or the exchange rate movements are not in line with fundamentals. And then the third one is on the intermediation of the FX flows, including those that are going through gold bond.
So is this framework being implemented as we speak, or it is now being put in place? The framework, is this something that we already are using, or something we are considering? I just want to understand that.
Together with the BOG, we are still working on the final details, and hopefully the board of the BOG will
the board of the bank of the fund.
No, the board of the BOG
will approve.
Will approve it. This was an important milestone for the field review.
But before that framework, the BOG is already managing FX.
It does.
And
yes,
the currency has appreciated quite well. So my thought is, even before the framework, they seem to be, because don't forget the biggest problem in Ghana, or second biggest after inflation, was FX. And indeed, you showed the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So if between January, February, and now, the cedi has appreciated, I think, 35% against the dollar, things seem to be working, right? Why do we still need a new framework?
So basically, the new framework tries to make things more transparent, and the auctions that the BOG has to the market participants be more market neutral, such that the interbank market starts to work by itself without any interventions.
I see. So which means that when the framework is in place, it will prevent or expose excessive intervention if there is anything like that. As in, because I do know that when, again, basics economics, when you're doing what you call a flexible exchange rate regime, you allow the market forces to play, but the central bank does intervene as and when necessary. Exactly. This is what the theory tells us.
Exactly. So we will still have flexible exchange rate, and that's basically our main policy advice.
Yeah, and not to preempt the board, I just want to understand for the public sector, will that have a number? So, for example, will you say X percentage intervention is too much? Do you know what I'm saying? Is there a way? Will the framework tell us if the governor allows $10 billion, pumps that into the market, would that be too much? Is there a figure we can use? Is it quantitative?
Yeah.
Or it will have to be?
I don't wanna front run the BOG board.
Okay.
You know, once the board approves this revamped FX operations framework, perhaps they will put a press release, and they will
which will have the details.
The details of those operations.
Yeah, because the FX is a big issue, of course. But generally, the bank the fund will agree with the building up of reserves, because I think the country, even prior to this administration, had been using a lot of its gold proceeds to build up its dollar reserves. And I think they started using it in the first part of the year, which seems to have strengthened the cedi. That generally is something the fund is not opposed to, correct? Generally.
I would say, if once it is done through transparent and under a governance framework, and not through quasi-fiscal activities and other issues, I think that could work well.
Wonderful. So back to the quantitative targets, generally by June. Cool. Structural benchmarks, by which you mean more long-term institutional reform type of things. You say that there is still some work to be done. You mentioned the energy sector. I just want to know, because as we speak, right, the energy parastatals are asking for more tariffs. All right. So I'm not sure if how well is the energy sector doing based on your review? What did you see in the energy sector that made you believe that we're on the right path? Because when you listen to Ghanaians watching the Public Accounts Committee talk to ECG, for example, and they talk about the amount of money they spent beyond approvals, a lot of people are not happy, and they're asking for 250% increase. So when you say generally the energy sector reforms seem to be right, I want you to put a bit of flesh on that for me.
Yeah. So for the energy sector, I would mention maybe three aspects. One, it's on the ECG side. ECG's revenues have increased quite substantially compared to last year.
Okay.
That is both because of better transparency, the effect of tariffs, and better collection. Okay. Second, the implementation of the cash waterfall mechanism this year has been much better and in a more transparent manner. The IPPs are now paid more regularly. Also, the fuel suppliers as well, and the arrears accumulated this year are very limited, if none. And thirdly, the renegotiation of the arrears, of the past arrears, which was conducted by the government this summer, is an important milestone, I would say. That is a reset for the industry.
Permit my ignorance as a non-energy expert. It seems to me as if the power sector has accumulated debts also because of what I would call FX losses. Or let me explain that. So if I am an independent power producer who buys fuel in dollars to power my plant, and because of the currency depreciation, the time I'm supposed to pay back, the tariff is collected in cedis. So maybe when I did the arrangement, it was 6 cedis to the dollar, but now I'm supposed to pay 12 cedis to the dollar. It throws me off. So my point is that, will the reform also include some optimal power mix, which reduces the nation's exposure to, say, foreign fuel? Do you understand me? Because if you want to really strengthen the power sector, a lot of the debts are there not just because of mismanagement, but because if you sign an agreement and the currency depreciates, you understand? So do you have any benchmark around an optimal power sector mix, which then reduces our vulnerability to foreign exchange volatility?
So let me start from the big picture. Basically, hydro is about 40-50% of the energy production, okay? But this hydro power varies across the year, depending on the season. Now, what is left is basically fuel-based energy. What the IMF team has continuously advised the government is to have a pecking order for these fuels, to choose the cheapest ones and to prioritize the cheapest fuels such as gas and others at the expense of liquid fuel, which is much more expensive.
Okay.
And I think the strategy of the current government is to become more independent, gas producing independent. And that is an important milestone, I think. If they could manage to ramp up domestic production of gas, then they could potentially make substantial savings with fuel purchases.
Wonderful. We'll take a breather. When we come back, we'll wrap up with some very interesting things around fiscal responsibility and domestic revenue mobilization. That's always a big one. This is The Point of View. Tonight we're talking economy. My guest is Dr. Adrian Alta, IMF resident rep. First time resident in Ghana, first interview. Hope you're enjoying it. Stay with us.